Well, Ukrainian officers at a Crimean border checkpoint say nearly 1,000 people have left the peninsula since the 4th of March. Guards say there's been heavy traffic through the Armyansk border post in recent weeks. Pro-Russian forces began taking over key government and military buildings in late February.
Around 3,000 vehicles and 6,000 people go through this checkpoint every day. From March 4th to the 21st, some 987 refugees arrived.
Well, the head of Ukraine's border guards has visited one of the new defensive positions on the border with Russia. He said the troops there were tasked with stopping provocateurs from Russia from entering Ukraine and increasing tension in the region. The US says it's wary of Russian assurances over military exercises near the border.
The Russians have stated that they are intending military exercises, obviously given their past practice and the gap between what they have said and what they have done. We are watching it with skepticism.
Well, our correspondent Nick Spicer is joining us live from Crimea's capital, Simferopol. Now, Nick, just how tense are things on those border posts where Ukrainian guards are tasked with stopping what they call Russian provocateurs?
There's been tension for weeks now. As things are seen from Kiev, Moscow is sending in professional political agitators in order to create an impression in the media and in the mind's eye of the international community that the rights of the Russian speakers, who are a majority in the east and the southeast of the country, are not being respected. The idea is that Moscow is sending in people who will create possibly violent incidents or at least swell the numbers of demonstrations to give the impression that Kiev is not doing all it should to respect the rights of the Russian speakers in Ukraine. Of course, Kiev denies this and says it's all a manner for Moscow to manipulate world public opinion and that the rights of the Russian speakers are being respected.
So, meanwhile, Nick, these international monitors are going to be in Ukraine. What are they tasked with doing there? And will they be playing a role in clarifying this situation at all?
I think it's a welcome development, certainly in the eyes of the United Nations and in the eyes of Kiev. Observers were prevented from coming in, except those hand-chosen by Moscow and by the government here in Simferopol, from observing the referendum, which took place last Sunday. A UN team arrived here on Friday and today is continuing its work, not talking to the media, but talking to local journalists who may have felt repressed, talking to members of the Ukrainian military who may feel they have to leave the country, as well as talking to people involved in human rights. The acting Prime Minister, they'll be making a statement when they get back to New York. As you were saying earlier, however, a significant development is a decision by the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, to send 100 observers into Ukraine, and that will help possibly shed light on the murky situation in the east of the country and help dispel the claims by one side or the other of Russians being repressed or of Moscow sending in provocateurs. The numbers may boost up to 400 observers across Ukraine. The one big question mark is whether Ukraine still includes Crimea. The deal that was struck by the 56 members of the OSCE ended with an agreement to disagree, if you will, between the United States and Russia as to whether those OSCE observers will be allowed into Crimea. We'll just have to wait and see whether they do actually get in, but the UN is in now, and that is a significant development in terms of having an international eye on what is actually going on here and helping dispel the claims of both sides.
Thank you very much for that, Nick. That's Nick Spicer joining us from the Crimean capital, Simferopol.